Next step communications from the Source are your point of connection with the work of the Source to build the heaven life was meant to be. I'm Sherry Daniel. I'm the director of the Heaven Project and the founder of the Miracle School. Next Step Communications is sponsored by the Miracle School, which is a Source-directed, miracle-based training program for spiritual activists. This Source communication is part of the Live Heaven Spiritual Coaching Series, which is Source-directed, miracle-based spiritual coaching that empowers you to live the adventure that manifests the heaven of true happiness. Now let's take a look at how to work with this Source communication. This Source communication conveys the Source perspective on the state of the world and on the Source solutions that can transform life into the heaven of true happiness that it was created to be. As the manifestation of the Source who incarnates in order to help beings to transition into a life that is heaven, I help you to think through what is needed to make this transition and access the miracles that will help you to bring the picture into sharper focus. Transformational energies are transmitted through this Source communication, through the sound of my voice, through the written word, through the Source drawing that is the background for the slides, and through the other Source drawings that will be used to provide you with information on how the Source sees the spiritual level of reality. To benefit from these energies, you need to listen with your heart and ask to awaken to the heaven that life was meant to be. Source communications introduce you to a world that is unfamiliar to most people. It takes a while for your suit, your spiritual body-mind, to comprehend the breadth and depth of the Source perspective on reality. If you approach this work as time with the Source, to receive the Source support that you need to stop the suffering in your life and in the world, and to understand how to transition into a life that is heaven, then you will have the right mindset for working with a Source communication. Commit to hearing the message to you from the Source through the entire Source communication given in this video. Only when you do your part of carefully attending to the information provided here will you be able to benefit from the transformational energies and the Source guidance for how to manifest heaven in your life and in the world. The focus of this Source communication is on the final and most dangerous vibrational shift. It will provide you with information on how to understand and prepare for the vibrational shift on September 16, 2014. I'll begin with some basic background information on what a vibrational shift is and on the history of vibrational shifts, on the specifics about the vibrational shift that will be occurring on September 16th, and then I'll conclude with instructions on how you can prepare for the vibrational shift. In the beginning of the creation, beings were born into a level 10 vibration, which provided them with the optimum spiritual environment in which to experience life as heaven. When they arrived in their first manifest forms at this level, they had to work to make the initial Source connection that would enable them to receive all of the miracles from the Source that would make their life heaven. Instead of working to connect to the Source and set up life as heaven, the suits became attracted to all of the pleasures that they perceived and set off in pursuit of them. This created a disconnection from the Source, which led to the steady drop in the vibrational level of the suits. As the suits throughout the creation disconnected from the Source and dropped in vibration, they dropped the spiritual platform on which all beings in the creation reside to lower and lower levels of spiritual vibration. Finally, in November 2012, the spiritual platform was on the verge of dropping to a level 1 vibration. At a level 1 vibration, there is no source love, which is what holds the spiritual particles of which the suit is made together. Without source love, all of the particles of the suits would have drifted apart, causing the rupturing of the spiritual structure of the manifest forms. This would have led to the dematerialization of all forms of life, from the planets to the species living on the planets to the atoms of which all things are made. To avert this disaster, the Source initiated a series of 7 vibrational shifts that began to lift the spiritual platform of the creation. With each vibrational shift, the platform is taken back up toward the levels of vibration at which spiritual integration can occur. At higher levels, there is more source love, which is what holds the spiritual particles of which the suits are made together. This helps the suits to recover from the disease of fragmentation, which has occurred when they lacked the levels of source love that enabled their spiritual particles to preserve the essential spiritual structures of life that enable them to sustain good health. When spiritual fragmentation sets in, it creates gaps in the structure of the suit, which disrupt the intricate intelligent system of life, leading to all of the diseases of the body, mind, and spirit. To understand what a suit is like when it's fully source-connected and what it's like when it is fully disconnected, let's explore a series of source drawings. In this source drawing, the blue circle represents the suit, the spiritual body-mind of a being. When a being is 100% source-connected, the suit is replete with source love, represented here by the pink energy in the suit. Source love is the energy that holds all of the spiritual particles of which the suit is made in a state of perfect spiritual integration. In a state of perfect spiritual integration, the soul, which is who the being really is able to manifest fully in the suit. In this source drawing, the soul is represented by the white energy. Due to massive universal changes in recent years, the soul no longer resides in the suit. It has had to return to the unmanifest level of reality from which it came into the manifest world. For the sake of these source drawings, the white energy that is depicted here represents the consciousness of the soul that is linked to the suit, rather than the soul itself, which resides in the unmanifest level of reality. The soul is a perfected spiritual intelligence, which links to a suit in order to work with the source to manifest the heaven of true happiness in the world. A suit through which the soul is expressing fully is capable of working with the source to manifest the heaven of total abundance, perfect health, love-based relationships, life purpose fulfillment, and the love connection with the source. These are the 5 elements of a miracle-based heaven way of life. When a suit disconnects from the source, the suit drops in vibration, creating a toxic energy environment in the suit that makes it inhospitable to the soul, which is unable to express through the parts of the suit that have become toxic, which are represented here by the gray. In the toxic parts of the suit, there is no source love. Without source love, the spiritual particles of which the suit is made have nothing to hold them together. They begin to drift apart, causing the disease of fragmentation. Once the disease of fragmentation sets in the suit, it creates more toxic energy from the diseases of the body, mind, and spirit that result from the state of fragmentation. This accelerates the fragmentation process. As the disease of fragmentation progresses, more toxic energies pollute the suit. This pushes the soul out of more and more parts of the suit. The soul can't manifest in any part of the suit that is lacking the medium of source love. As the perfection and beauty and love of the soul is pushed back by the advancing disease of fragmentation, the toxic parts of the suit become even more toxic, which further accelerates the disease of fragmentation. As more of the suit becomes toxic, the vibration in the suit drops from a level 10 vibration where it began, which is the optimum level of vibration, the level at which the heaven of true happiness can be experienced, to lower and lower levels of spiritual vibration. The lower the vibration, the more toxic the energies in the suit, and the more vulnerable the suit is to invasion by the negativity, the criminal element that operates on the inner plane. As the vibration continues to drop, the outer shell of the suit, which is what I call the suit container, also begins to fragment. It becomes permeable. Negative agents operating on the inner plane see this vulnerability and seize the opportunity to invade the suit, to harvest it for its life energies, and to countermand it for their own purposes. Once the suit is invaded by one negative agent, others gather around, competing for control of the suit. The consciousness of the soul is then expelled from the suit. This causes spiritual death. Spiritual death results in an empty suit through which the consciousness of the negative agents possessing it can be expressed. In some cases, there is a radical shift in personality, where a mild-mannered person might take up a shotgun and become a mass murderer. In other cases, the negative agents prefer to work behind the scenes. They cloak themselves in the personality of the former being to disguise their attacks on the family, friends, and co-workers of the being. In this way, they accelerate fragmentation in these beings and work them toward the point at which they can be invaded and countermanded. After spiritual death occurs, the negative agents are no longer held at bay in any part of the suit. They are free to consume the resources of the suit and vie for control of it. Eventually, the negative agents drop the vibrational level of the suit to the point at which all of the spiritual particles of which it is made on a spiritual level are so fragmented that the suit itself is destroyed at a spiritual level, which leads to death at a physical level. The negative agents then move on to other conquests. All of the diseases of the body, mind, and spirit are caused by the disconnection from the source. Disconnection from the source, who is life, leads to spiritual and physical death. Now let's return to take a closer look at what has been happening in the creation as the result of the disconnection from the source and the onset of the disease of fragmentation. In November 2012, this is where the creation was, at a level 2 vibration, on the verge of dropping to a level 1 vibration, which would have led to the disintegration of the creation, as we noted earlier. To avert this disaster, and to help suits attain the level of spiritual integration that is required to sustain life in the creation, the Source created the source solution of a series of 7 vibrational shifts, which is what you see here. As I mentioned earlier, a vibrational shift lifts the spiritual platform that underlies the creation up to a higher level of spiritual vibration. The platform is lifted up by a massive tidal wave of source power that moves the platform up to the level of vibration where it needs to be for that particular vibrational shift. When the platform stabilizes at a higher level of spiritual integration, all beings must be able to match the level of spiritual integration of the creation at the new vibrational level. Suits that are very fragmented and which do not prepare adequately for the vibrational shift suffer more fragmentation during the upheaval of the change and in the high-speed vibrational field of the creation after the change. In the first 3 vibrational shifts, which moved the spiritual platform from a level 2 to a level 3 vibration, 21% of the population suffered spiritual death. In the huge rise in vibrational level that occurred on August 8th, when the platform moved from a level 3 to a level 6, over 45% of the Earth's human population suffered spiritual death. Some souls have been relinked to the suits, but most of the 45% remain empty suits. There have been major source solutions brought through to stabilize empty suits so that they are less likely to be countermanded by the negativity. These source solutions provide them with a resident heaven agent identity that can substitute for the soul and enable them to heal from the disease of fragmentation and make a positive contribution to life. Empty suits are still at risk, however, for being overwhelmed by the negativity, which is actively seeking suits to control so that they can continue their harvesting operation. In each vibrational shift, more and more elements of the negativity have fragmented to the point of disintegration, freeing the world of their criminal activities. There are still some high-tech aspects of the negativity that have managed to harvest enough life energies from empty suits that have some remaining source energies, and also from more source-connected suits, to remain in operation. These highly evolved parasitic negative agents threaten the safety of all disconnected suits. Getting back to the history of the vibrational shifts, in the vibrational shift of September 16, 2013 and December 20, 2013, very few beings lost their lives. This was due to the source solutions that were possible at these higher levels of vibration. But now with the final vibrational shift that will occur on September 16, 2014, there is a much higher risk of loss of life than in any of the previous vibrational shifts. Although the vibrational shift is only a shift from a 7.3 to a 7.5, disconnected suits cannot survive at a 7.5 vibrational level. Suits must be source connected to survive. Let's take a look at the risk factor in greater detail. Keep in mind as I discuss the risks involved that source solutions have been created to counteract these risks so that disaster is not inevitable unless beings do not choose to work with the gift of these source solutions. In this source drawing, you can see the 3 vibrational levels that will be traveled in the upcoming vibrational shift. The starting point is the 7.3 vibrational level where we are now, and the 7.5 vibrational level is where we will be at the end of the shift. The blue circle represents a being moving up the vibrational levels propelled by the tidal wave of the vibrational shift that is represented by the white arrow. The tidal wave is moving the spiritual platform on which all beings reside, which is in turn moving the being. At a 7.5 vibrational level, the suit container that contains the contents of the suit, which is the consciousness that makes a being what it is, has to be source-connected in order to survive the shift. In this source drawing, I'm depicting a suit with a source-connected container, symbolized by the yellow circle that contains the consciousness of the being. In this source drawing, I will show you what happens if the suit container is disconnected from the source by the disease of fragmentation. The disconnected suit container is represented by the orange ring that forms the outermost rim of the suit. If the container is disconnected from the source, the intensity of the vibrational shift tidal wave will begin to fragment the suit container. The container is the essential structure of life that holds in the consciousness that contains the characteristics of the being. Once the container is ruptured, there will be nothing left of the consciousness of the being without the protective shield of the suit container around it. The consciousness will lose its structure and will be spilled out into the spiritual void in which beings now reside. In this void it will become dissipated. This is a more radical loss of life than in the former vibrational shifts, where many of the characteristics of the former consciousness remained on board the suit, even after the departure of the soul. Although negative agents invading the suit could override this consciousness, the consciousness was generally suppressed rather than eradicated and could be restored if the negativity was ousted and the former consciousness was brought back to the surface. This is how I was able, in many instances, to relink the soul because the consciousness in the suit was still there to support the soul once it was relinked. In the September 16th vibrational shift, this consciousness can't be retained if the suit container is ruptured in the tidal wave of the shift. If the container itself is fragmented, then the spiritual shock waves generated by the trauma experienced by the suit will accelerate spiritual fragmentation, leading to other shock waves to continue to fragment the container until it ceases to exist. These shock waves will not only rupture the container of the suit, but will go out from this epicenter of destruction to shock wave other suits and cause their containers to fragment to the point of complete disintegration. Even suits that have containers that are more source connected will be ruptured from the impact of the collective shock waves generated by the highly disconnected suits, which will go down first. The end result will be the annihilation of most of life at the spiritual level throughout the creation. Because this is an outcome that can't be allowed to occur, the Source has created a source solution that will enable beings to transition into a suit container that is source connected prior to the shift. In this source drawing, you can see a suit with a source connected suit container, which is symbolized by the yellow ring around the suit. It can hold up even amidst the worst shock waves generated by other suits. The key variable in the survival of suits in this vibrational shift is their decision to work with a source to receive the source solution of a source-connected suit container, which will give them the ability to not only survive the vibrational shift, but to ride the tidal wave of the shift to higher levels of spiritual functioning. With these higher levels of spiritual functioning, they will be better equipped to transition into the heaven that is possible at a 7.5 vibrational level. To understand what is involved in transitioning from a disconnected suit to a source-connected suit, let's explore how each of these suits functions. In this source drawing, you can see a disconnected suit and a source-connected suit. In a disconnected suit, the negative thought and behavioral patterns are held in the container. They are the negative aspect of the consciousness of the suit. They network to the container to harvest the life energies of the container, and the container networks to them to harvest their energies. They also network to one another to harvest each other's energies. It is a parasitic, competitive battle for scarce energy resources, with each fragmented behavioral pattern fighting to feed off of the host, which is the container, and to feed off the other fragments in the container. When a being transitions from a disconnected suit into a source-connected suit, their negative patterns remain in the new suit container. The suit container does not, however, network to the negative patterns or permit the negative patterns to network to it. It also prevents the negative patterns from networking to one another. The source-connected suit container is able to work effectively with the source to oust these negative patterns and clear the container of their disease-engendering influence. When the September 16th vibrational shift tidal wave, symbolized here by the white arrow, hits the disconnected suit, it will first weaken the walls of the suit container, and then the container itself will begin to rupture as it fragments. Now let's take a look at the alternative to this disastrous outcome. When the tidal wave of the September 16th vibrational shift hits the suit container of a source-connected suit, there is no fragmentation. In fact, the high vibrational energies help the source-connected suit to work more effectively with the source to oust the negative patterns more rapidly, giving it a clean slate from which to work toward establishing a heaven way of life. Let's take a look at the problem, the risk factor in this vibrational shift. The suit container of disconnected suits will not survive this vibrational shift. Shifting to a 7.5 vibrational level requires a suit container that is source connected. Beings throughout the creation could fragment to the point of spiritual death, which can, in the case of the young, the elderly, and the infirm, also lead to physical death. Since almost 100% of the suit containers in the creation are disconnected to some degree, all beings would suffer some damage. The spiritual shock waves generated by those suffering the most extreme fragmentation would have the power to fragment suits that are more source-connected, but who do not also meet the requirement for a fully source-connected suit container. The end result could be massive spiritual death, which would destabilize the organic level of the suits, resulting in serious physical illness and physical death. Now let's take a look at the first source solution, which is temporary suits. On August 1st, a great miracle was created. It enabled beings to receive temporary source-connected suits that would enable them to have enough spiritual integration at the suit container level to survive the vibrational shift and to adjust to the level of integration after the shift. These suits don't have all of the qualities of a permanent source-connected suit. As you can see in this source drawing, they are not expanded like the permanent source-connected suit, and they can't clear the negative patterns out very easily as can a permanent source-connected suit. The advantage is that the negative patterns are not networked to the container, as in the disconnected suit, and they are not networked to one another. This gives the suit the ability to take decisive action to begin releasing these negative patterns. Although this is a more labor-intensive process than in a permanent source-connected suit, it is easier than in a disconnected suit, where all of the patterns are networked together and hold on to one another, so that whatever pattern is targeted for release is able to sustain itself through its link to other patterns. When the new temporary suits were created, I sent out a source communication to all beings that these suits were available and did not require any additional material energy to ground. I had a cache of material energy generated by the Earth as a spiritual being through her contribution to the work on previous vibrational shifts. This material energy was used to ground this miracle on behalf of all beings. Beings throughout the creation, even some of the worst hell agents, requested to transition into temporary source-connected suits because they realized that their disconnected suits would disintegrate in the vibrational shift. Before I gave beings the temporary source-connected suits, I warned them that these suits would only last until November 17, 2014. After that time, they would disintegrate. I told beings that they would have to provide the material energy for the source-connected suit project that is designed to enable all beings to receive source-connected suits before their temporary suits dissolve. Beings accepted the need to work with the source to ground the miracle of source-connected suits, knowing that all that the temporary suits did was to buy them a little more time. Rather than having the container of their suit disintegrate on September 16th during the vibrational shift, it would disintegrate on November 17th, unless they worked to transition into permanent source-connected suits. Ideally, this project should be funded with the right amount of material energy prior to the September 16th vibrational shift. Then beings will be able to use the power of the vibrational shift to clear out the negative patterns in their suits at a more profound level. This will catapult them to a much higher level of freedom from the negativity. They will be much better prepared to begin living heaven in their everyday lives. The project needs to be funded well in advance of November 17th, so that I will have time to put into place the spiritual structures that enable all beings to receive source-connected suits and to sustain them over time. I'll be providing details on the kinds of spiritual structures that are needed in a later part of this source communication. This work needs to be completed on the Earth first so that beings outside of the Earth plane will have time to work with me to ground the same kind of spiritual structures in their environment, and I will have the time to work with the spiritual structures to provide them with source-connected suits. There isn't much time to accomplish all of this. What we don't want is what happens when the temporary suit runs out of time and begins to disintegrate. When the temporary suit disintegrates, the consciousness in the suit from all of its life experiences, from the beginning of its series of incarnations in the manifest world, is dissipated, lost for all eternity. The consciousness of the soul is also lost as it unlinks from the suit, precipitating spiritual death. There is then nothing left to transition into a source-connected suit. The container is essential to the structure of life at the spiritual level of reality. If it disintegrates, then the contents of the container, which are the soul and the life consciousness of the suit, are lost. The being as a spiritual intelligence vanishes from the creation on every level. This is why it is important to transition into a source-connected suit prior to the expiration of the temporary suit. So this brings us to the second source solution. This is the source solution of the Source-Connected Suit project. Through this project, beings can work together to ensure that they transition successfully into permanent source-connected suits before their temporary suits expire. Now let's take a look at the Source-Connected Suit project. The Source has created the Source-Connected Suit project to provide all beings throughout the creation with the opportunity to have permanent source-connected suits to replace the temporary suits which will only last until November 17th, 2014. With a fully expanded, full-power source-connected suit, a being is capable of clearing away the negative patterns that cause the diseases of the body, mind, and spirit. This will enable the suit to achieve the 100% source connection that will make it possible for it to receive all of the healing energies available from the spiritual healing power station that just landed on the earth. It is this power station that has made the miracle of a source-connected suit possible. Beings with source-connected suits will be able to achieve perfect health. They will be able to work peacefully and intelligently with one another and with the Source to build the heaven of a love-based world that is abundant and disease-free, a world in which every life is nurtured and fulfilled. Now let's take a look at how the Source-Connected Suit project works. In Part 1 of the project, when 700 Heaven Agents receive Source-Connected Suits, they will be able to perform the Heaven Agent work that is needed to ground the Source Connection Grid, which will enable all species on the planet to receive Source-Connected Suits. In Part 2 of the project, when Heaven Agents provide the right amount of material energy to ground the miracle of the global support system that the Source-Connected Suits will need, I will be able to bring in this miracle and get it fully activated to sustain the newly created suits. Let's take a look at these phases of the project through a series of source drawings. In this source drawing, I'm depicting a Heaven Agent in a temporary suit, which is symbolized by the blue border to the suit. The suit is merged into an individual source connection grid in preparation for transition to a source-connected suit. When an individual suit receives a source-connected suit, they have to be placed in a source connection grid which provides the stable spiritual electrical field that enables them to transition into a source-connected suit. Because fundamental structural change in the suit requires the disruption of the existing spiritual electrical system, so a new spiritual electrical system can be installed, the grid provides a substitute spiritual electrical system during the transition so the suit does not disintegrate. Once the transition has been made, the suit remains in the grid, which continues to support the new spiritual electrical system and to defend it against the attacks of the negativity that go first for the spiritual electrical system, which, if damaged, allows them access to the inner workings of the suit. In this source drawing, the transition to a source-connected suit has occurred. The source-connected suit container is symbolized by the yellow border. The first 700 heaven agents to receive source-connected suits on the Earth will each have to have an individual source connection grid in order to make the transition. When they have made the transition, they can provide the heaven agent work that will enable me to ground the miracle of a massive global source connection grid that will enable all other forms of life on the planet to transition into source-connected suits. The original 700 heaven agents will not be able to move into the global source connection grid, but their individual source connection grids will link to and draw on the power supply of the global source connection grid, which will be many times more powerful than an individual source connection grid. In this way, they will have all of the benefits of the additional support offered by the global source connection grid. Now let's take a look at the global source connection grid. In this source drawing, I'm depicting what the global source connection grid will be like when it is built. You can see that it is made of individual grids in which individual beings can transition from temporary suits, symbolized by the blue border to the suit, to a source-connected suit, which is symbolized by the yellow border. The grid can add on as many individual grid units as there are forms of life on the planet. What is drawn here is merely a representation of the essential structure of the grid. As beings are born into the Earth plane, more individual grids will be added. As they leave the Earth plane, their individual grid will be deleted. During the formation of the grid, the 700 heaven agents will need to work with me to provide a protective field of energy in which I can work to set up the grid. Once it is set up, then I will link the 700 heaven agents to it so that they can benefit from the power of the global grid once it is fully activated. 4 of the 700 heaven agents will link to the 4 corners of the grid. The other heaven agents will link to the grid indirectly through the global support system that has to be built as stage 2 of the project. The global support system is what provides the additional source support that is needed to sustain the source-connected suits. It channels healing energies at very high levels from the spiritual healing power station and works directly with the source to provide maximal support. The support system is made from 2 concentric manifestation rings that encompass the global source connection grid. The remaining heaven agents of the original group of 700 interface with the grid through the support system. When the source connection grid and the global support system have been built on the Earth, enabling all forms of life on the Earth to transition into source-connected suits, I will generate a spiritual prototype for this work. This prototype will carry the spiritual genetic code that will enable beings throughout the creation to understand how to work with me to build source connection grids and support systems in their communities. In this way, all beings throughout the creation will have the opportunity to have source-connected suits prior to the expiration of their temporary suits. The prototype that will save lives throughout the creation can only be built on the Earth, which is the most material level of the creation. It is therefore incumbent on heaven agents on the Earth to become love in action, to build this prototype so that beings awaiting it throughout the creation will have a chance to transition out of their temporary suits into the source-connected suits that will enable them to survive. Now let's talk about what you need to know to help build this prototype. You need to know how to transition out of story reality into source reality through shifting out of self-centered mode into source-centered mode. This knowledge is what you need at a basic level to work effectively with any source solution, not just the source solution of building this prototype, which is a part of the Source-Connected Suit project. Let's start with understanding story reality and source reality. Story reality is a very small picture reality that is based on the cultural stories that groups of people create about the nature of reality. Individuals within the culture build their personal stories on the foundation of the cultural stories. Personal and cultural stories together define the story reality of individuals and communities. Story realities generate very dark, low vibrational energy fields, which are fertile ground for the negativity. This is why the story reality field in this source drawing is symbolized by a black circle. This is in marked contrast to the very expanded light field energy field generated by source reality that operates beyond the limiting scope of a cultural or personal story. In source reality, it is possible to see what is really going on in the creation, guided by the omniscience of the source that points out what you need to notice in any given moment. Source reality is not only a big picture reality, as contrasted with the story reality, which is a very small picture reality. It is also a whole picture reality, since the source sees all aspects of what is happening at all times. Story reality is a partial picture reality. It creates a story out of a very small picture of reality, and then within that story skews the perspective, so it takes into account only part of this very small picture. The core intelligence in suits throughout the creation has evolved beyond story reality into source reality. This is why the core intelligence agreed to transition into temporary suits in order to survive the vibrational shift. The core intelligence is also very willing to work with the source to transition into source-connected suits because it realizes that this is essential to survival. The core intelligence, however, operates in the subconscious range of the suit. It is not the decision maker when it comes to decisions about whether to support the source-connected suit project on the outer plane. Despite the fact that the core intelligence of the suits has transitioned into source reality, the conscious range intelligence of most of the suits is still in story reality. People on the Earth especially are keying off of their various cultural and personal stories, paying more attention to what is in these stories than to the call of the source to take action to protect themselves in the spiritual transitions that lie ahead. They are generally oblivious of the decisions and actions taken by the core level of the suit. Because the kind of information conveyed in a source communication is not a part of most people's story reality, they tend to tune it out and make it not real, preferring to rely on their stories to define what is real. This makes it difficult for suits in the conscious range to rally in support of the source-connected suit project, which is not a part of their story reality. The underlying problem is that story reality serves the perceived needs and desires of individuals and communities. The personal and cultural stories organize them to want certain things and gives them a way to pursue their desires. This structure is what constitutes their story reality. Even if these stories lead them to engage in behaviors that are life-threatening, people often prefer the structure of the story reality to making the changes that would free them from this reality. In short, they would rather live and die in their story reality than evolve beyond it. This is because their suits are set in self-centered mode, where the pursuit of their self-interest is the organizing modality that generates and sustains the stories that are created to serve their self-interest. They don't want to question their personal and cultural stories because these stories are believed to be necessary to the gratification of their needs and desires. A good example is the case of a person who develops a personal story that they are cool because they smoke cigarettes. This personal story is keying off the cultural story that smoking makes you cool and more socially acceptable. Even if their doctor warns them that they are developing the early signs of lung cancer, they will often cling to their story that smoking makes them a desirable and attractive person, someone who fits into their social group. This will often be more important to them than preventing the cancer that will destroy their attractiveness and their ability to socialize in their group of friends and in their life itself. The same story logic applies to problems facing the global community. It has long been known that pollution from our industrial era is damaging the environment. Personal and cultural stories continue to value the lifestyle that demands the products that, when manufactured, generate the pollution. people have been slow to recognize that the way of life that their culture endorses could actually be dangerous to them, and even slower to take action to stop the pollution and save the environment. This is another case in which story reality overrides the ability to perceive what is really happening and to take action to correct for dangerous situations. To the individual believing in a particular cultural reality, this cultural reality seems absolute. But the fact is that cultural reality is relative. What people live and die for in one cultural reality may seem absurd and distasteful in another cultural reality. The truth is that cultural reality doesn't define reality. All the different cultures and subcultures of the world clash over differences in what is considered to be real. In fact, they discriminate against one another and wage war over whose cultural reality is going to prevail. The bottom line is that cultural reality is relative and not an absolute reality, which is true for all forms of life. When someone is caught up in a story reality, how do they hear the call of the source to respond to an urgent situation that is not a part of their story reality? For many, what happens on the spiritual level of reality is not a part of their life experience. What seems real to them is what they hear about in the evening news, what's happening on the physical level of reality. For those who are attuned to things spiritual, how do they extricate themselves from their spiritual stories in order to hear the call of the source if the source perspective is not a part of their spiritual story? What enables most beings to hear the source is an understanding that cultural stories are deluding them, catching them up in false realities that are relative to a particular cultural group. They don't wish to base their life decisions on such relative realities that pass out of favor as the cultural story evolves over time. They wish to reference ultimate truth, and they know that this can only come from the source. They therefore choose to listen to the communications from the source about what is happening in the creation, and to follow the lead of the source to ultimate safety. This is how the core intelligence level of the suit shifted into source reality, and this is the path that the conscious range intelligence level of the suit will need to travel in order to shift into source reality as well. The shift out of story reality into source reality can only happen in the conscious range of the suit when another shift takes place. This is the shift out of self-centered mode, which defines the self-interests that drive the story reality, into source-centered mode, which frees the being to enter source reality and follow the lead of the source to build heaven in their life and in their world. In source reality, which is founded on the source-centered mode, a being is open to following the lead of the source to build the heaven that they realize that only the source knows how to build. They don't cultivate self-interest because they realize that this would not enable them to be fluid enough to flow with the changes and dynamic manifestation process that brings heaven into the world. They therefore live beyond any story of reality and instead discover reality as it is manifesting around them. Shifting out of self-centered mode requires a technical adjustment in the suit. So let's take a look at what's involved in this adjustment. The self-centered mode can best be understood through following the action in a series of source drawings. In this source drawing, a being is represented by the blue circle. In the center of the intelligence system of the being is a quality control center, which is represented by the yellow ring. In the center of this quality control center is a dial that sets the quality controls for the suit. This dial is represented by the yellow square. Whatever this quality control dial is set for will determine the behavior of the suit on the inner and outer planes. The problem in the orientation of the being to the source occurs when this dial is set to self-centered mode. This setting drops the vibrational level of the suit so that fragmentation occurs, leading to a multiplicity of conflicting fragments of consciousness in the suit that vie for control of the suit. When the quality control dial is set for self-centered mode, a negative entity-like intelligence is generated in the suit that matches this self-centered mode. This is what I call the story character identity. It fashions a personal story about who it is and what it needs and wants to be happy, and then sets out on a self-interest campaign to fulfill this personal story. It dominates the quality control center and fends off the heaven agent identity that is the source-created identity that is given to the suit to enable the soul to express itself through the suit. The story character identity may agree to allow the heaven agent identity to radio to the source to request a miracle to make life easier. The story character only wants miracles that don't challenge the personal story and don't require any effort or inconvenience. When the heaven agent identity requests a source solution, and the source solution comes into play in the being's life, it naturally brings changes in the dysfunctional behavioral patterns arising from the personal story. This is because these dysfunctional behavioral patterns lead to suffering. When the heaven agent identity sees these heaven energies approaching the suit, which are represented by the white arrow, then it rejoices that finally source support is on the way to help it free itself from the scourge of the story character that is dominating suit functioning. The story character, however, realizes that the source isn't dancing to its tune and begins to attack to ward off the heaven energies, which it realizes could give power to the heaven agent identity, who could then oust it from the quality control center in the suit. If the story character identity doesn't feel strong enough to overpower the source solution, it will call on other negative entities and agents outside the suit to gang up with it against the source solution. Some of these negative agents attack the source solution directly, and others network to the story character to provide it with more power to fuel its attack on the source solution. Still others attack the heaven agent identity, which is perceived as the troublemaker calling in a source solution that is disruptive of the low vibrational energies that enable the negativity to dominate the suit and keep it in self-centered mode. As the battle wages on, some of the attacking negative agents are led into the suit by the story character that opens the door to them. They attack the heaven agent identity from within, and they invade the quality control center. The source solution has to divert power to rescue the heaven agent identity, meanwhile coming under attack by the negative agents who've moved into the suit and are now using the power base of the suit to attack the source solution. The story character soon discovers that it has been duped into opening the door to allies that soon dominate it, robbing it of its self-interest agenda, which is replaced with the self-interest agenda of the invading forces. They have their own story that they are trying to manifest, and they view the suit as real estate that they can now control for their own purposes. This is what is called a state of possession, when identities that are foreign to the suit take over the suit and use the suit to pursue their own agendas. Often the heaven agent identity is overpowered, and in some cases ousted from the suit along with the soul. The invading negative agents quickly fragment the suit to harvest its remaining life energies, and then, when they've consumed its life force, leave it a broken, empty suit that can barely sustain itself at an organic level. The suit is like a house devastated by war, where no trace of the life that used to be in the house remains. Empty suits countermanded by the negative agents can become criminals who engage in wanton acts of cruelty on the inner and outer planes, committing acts of violence on family members and friends and associates who formerly had trusting relationships with a person who has become possessed. There is nothing more chilling than an empty suit that looks like the person you used to know and love, but which is occupied by a malevolent intelligence that wishes to do you harm and is actively engaged in harming you on every level. This is an outcome far worse than the loss of a loved one through a physical death. At death, your loved one moves on to another spiritual space, but can still be in contact with you if this is appropriate. There is a sense of their loving presence somewhere in the creation, and there's a chance of one day being reunited in some other incarnation. In the case of spiritual death, your loved one no longer exists anywhere in the manifest world, and is unlikely to ever take on another manifest form since its primary spiritual suit, through which it incarnates, life after life, has been destroyed. The feeling of loss in a situation of this kind is a feeling of absolute loss. Because the story characters and suits have been increasingly amping up to attack incoming source solutions, the source is now no longer willing to send in source solutions to suits that are operating in self-centered mode. This is a big change for suits who've been used to calling on the source for help and then attacking the source if the help offered didn't fit what they wanted in their self-centered idea of what would make them happy. Now let's take a look at source-centered mode. In source-centered mode, the heaven agent identity that represents the soul is in control of the quality control center of the suit. The suit might still have a substantial story character vying for control, but it has been pushed to one side and the heaven agent identity is working to oust it from the suit. Instead of the heaven agent identity calling on the source to serve its needs through sending in a source solution for some personal gain, the heaven agent identity is asking to become what is needed to support the work of the source, with regard to supporting whatever source solution the source is working on at the moment. This might be a source solution for the community or for another individual in the community. There might not be any immediate personal gain from working to support the project at hand. Since self-interest is not the focus, the heaven agent identity is content to spring into action to do the heaven agent work that generates the material energy that enables the source to land whatever source solution is needed at the time. The experience of loving and giving and expressing gratitude and being in the midst of the beauty of a perfect process that is manifesting heaven is the heaven that the heaven agent experiences. As heaven manifests in his life and in the world, he celebrates the beauty of the source design and opens to the next adventure. In this way he lives the love that makes life heaven, having transcended completely the fear of loss that drives the self-centered, self-interest mode, which spirals down into endless levels of suffering. Those living the love experience the heaven of this love and get to be in the midst of an incredible experience of heaven in the making, doing their part with the skills given them by the Source as they become what is needed to support the work of the Source. So let's take a look at what this looks like when a heaven agent is working to support a source solution that is coming in. Here the heaven agent identity is asked to become what is needed to support the work of the source. A source solution has arrived and is sending in power to help the heaven agent to do his work with the source solution. The heaven agent is sending material energy to the source to help ground the source solution as it comes in. The heaven agent then uses some of the power given to it by the source solution to oust the aspect of the story character identity that is trying to seize control over the quality control center of the suit. Here you see that the heaven agent identity has successfully used the power of the source solution to push out the aspect of the story character identity that was warring against it from within. Source solutions always give power to the heaven agent identity to reclaim the territory of the suit for heaven. If other negative agents move in to obstruct the source solution coming in, the heaven agent springs into action, using the source power to help defeat the attacking forces so that the source solution can do its work. Notice that because the heaven agent identity is in the control center of the suit, the other negative agents that we saw moving in to attack the heaven agent identity and to merge into and take over the quality control center in the suit that was self-centered are not present. They are only able to invade a suit that is operating in self-centered mode. In time, the attacking forces are eliminated, and the heaven agent identity works with the source solution in accordance with the source guidance it receives for how to understand it and welcome it into the world. So let's look at a summary of the problem, which is the self-centered mode, and the source solution to this problem, which is the source-centered mode. So let's look at the criteria for receiving the miracle of a source solution. No source solution can be sent to those in self-centered mode because of the damaging effects of the negativity. Only those who have worked with the source to reset the quality control dial to the source-centered mode can receive the miracle of a source solution. So let's look at how you can reset the dial. In this source drawing, we are focused again on the quality control center in the suit. In the middle of the center is the dial that is currently set to self-centered mode. The only way to reset the quality control dial so it is source-centered rather than self-centered is to ask the source to reset the dial for you. This can be accomplished through the source solution of an at-a-distance source intervention. The material energy that grounds the miracle of this source intervention has been provided by the spiritual being whose physical suit is the earth, through her exemplary heaven agent work in previous vibrational shifts. The way to ask the source for this reset is to ask to become what is needed to support the work of the source to reset the quality control dial to the source-centered mode. Once this request is made, the source will send in a source solution that moves so quickly to reset the dial that no opposition can be amassed against it. Once the dial is reset to source-centered mode, the story character identity that is dominating the quality control center will be removed and replaced by the heaven agent identity, which will move into the quality control center and begin manning the station. The suit is then capable of being sent the source-centered mindset that enables the heaven agent identity to know how to work within a source-centered modality. The source-centered mindset is generated by a manifestation ring depicted here as the yellow ring. When the quality control dial was reset to the source-centered mode for the members of the 14 prototype communities that I founded many thousands of years ago in different parts of the creation, they became capable of working with the source-centered mindset. The source-centered mindset enabled them to turn their attention to what was happening next in the work of the source. They understood that the work of the source was to build a quality of life that would bring the heaven of true happiness to every member of the community. They didn't understand how this was going to happen, but they were willing to become what was needed to support the work of the source in each moment. They understood that the complexity of the billions of variables that the source was calculating to build this heaven was beyond their range of comprehension, and that they just needed to support the project and let the source guide them to do their parts. Because they had transcended the self-centered mode, they were not living in the fear that their needs and desires were not going to be met. They assumed that they might not have any idea how heaven was going to manifest or what it would mean to them individually, but they relaxed and went with the flow of source power that guided them to do their parts in the manifestation of a heaven way of life. Through working with a source-centered mindset, they were able to flow naturally into accepting the source-connected suits that they were given, which enabled them to release effectively from the negative patterns that had caused them suffering and which had been preventing them from transitioning into a heaven way of life. As a result of their contribution to the ongoing source-directed manifestation process, they successfully transitioned into the heaven way of life that they enjoy to this day. Now let's review all of the information that's been presented in this source communication with a focus on how to prepare for the vibrational shift of September 16th. Let's take a look at the steps you need to take in order to prepare. In step 1, you understand that you have a limited time in which to survive in the temporary suit which your core intelligence has requested from the source. This temporary suit will enable you to survive the September 16th vibrational shift, but will expire on November 17th, 2014. Step 2 is to understand that what you need is a permanent source-connected suit. Step 3 is to prepare to receive a source-connected suit by requesting the reset of your quality control dial to source-centered mode. Follow the instructions given in the source communication for how to request this reset. Step 4, once you have the reset, you are prepared to work with a source solution that will make it possible for all beings to have source-connected suits. This source solution is the Source Connected Suit Project. To find out the details of the project and how you can help, you can go to www.themiracleschool.net/SCSP. Become what is needed to support the work of the Source on the Source-Connected Suit Project. Help usher in the era of Source-Connected Suits for all beings. Work with the Source to build a world in which Source-Connected Suits work harmoniously with one another and with the Source to manifest the heaven life was meant to be.